Testing, one, two, three, test, test.
Testing. Testing channel.
Audio test for the meeting stream.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, please. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our November meeting of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. I'll ask that the committee coordinator call the roll.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Luloff.
Hello.
Councillor Skalski. Vice Chair Kelly.
Present.
And Chair Brown. You have quorum,
I'm
Mr. Chair.
here. Thank you very much. And here's Councillor Skalski. It's all right. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and or zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 4.1, 4.2, 4.4, and 4.5 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on the 12th of November, 2025, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, confirmation of the ARAC minutes 28 of Thursday, October 2nd. Are the minutes of the meeting from October 2nd confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you. Item 4.1, it's the zoning omnibus amendments Q4 2025. Derek Moody and Mitch Lesage are here. There is no presentation. This was a report that was also considered by Planning and Housing Committee at its meeting yesterday, at which time the report recommendations were carried as presented. We have received no request to speak on this item, but we have received a written submission, and that has been saved to the SharePoint file. Is there anyone, though, however, that wishes to speak to this item today in the gallery? Any questions from my colleagues? None? The report recommendations are that 1, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve amendments to zoning bylaw number 2008-250 as shown in document 1 and detailed in document 2, and 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. Item 4.2 zoning bylaw amendment, part of 4186 William McEwen Drive, part of 4221 Moody Drive, and part of 3478 Moody Drive. Marcia Wallace, the general manager of the planning department, and Stephen are here. We do have a staff presentation. We've received requests to speak from 2 delegates, and we have received some written submissions. I know I will note that a few of the delegations have opted to withdraw prior to the commencement of committee. If it is the will of committee to carry this item on consent, is there anyone who still wishes to speak who signed up as a delegate? Seeing a lot of shaking heads back there. Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues? All right. The report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for part of 4186 William McEwen Drive, part of 4221 Moody Drive, and part of 3478 Moody Drive, as shown in document 1, to permit a battery energy storage system and associated private utilities as detailed in document 2. And number 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report. Is this item carried?
Right.
Thank you very much. Item 4.3, June 30th, 2024 Rural Residential Land Survey. I am going to ask staff to come forward. I believe a presentation has been prepared. I'm going to ask that staff do the major highlights of this, just so committee has the gist of what staff have presented. And then if there are questions from members of committee, we'll go to those. Floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. While we're waiting for the presentation to come up, I'd like to introduce Eva Wallron. She's a planner in research and forecasting, the file lead for our rural residential land survey, and she'll be providing a brief presentation on the survey and its relationship to the official plan amendment for our growth projections update. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Royce. Good morning, Chair and Committee. This morning, I'll be presenting on the mid-2024 Rural Residential Land Survey. However, as many of you are aware, we are also in the process of updating our official plan growth projections. And as the mid-2024 RILS report uses the current official plan projections and designations to monitor supply, I will also provide a brief update on our official plan growth projections work plan. Next slide, please. So this began in October 2024 when the new provincial planning statement, our PPS, came into effect. The new PPS included the use of Ministry of Finance population projections as the basis of official plan growth projections, and the policy that private applications could be made for settlement area expansion outside of a comprehensive review. As a result, Ottawa City Council adopted a framework to consider settlement area expansion applications, which included the use of current official plan projections as the basis of these applications, and this framework directed staff to begin the growth projections update in 2025. In June 2025, the official plan amendment to update growth projections began with a work plan to joint PHC, ARAC, and Council. In August 2025, the Ministry of Finance released the latest population projections for the City of Ottawa, and the province released the proposed updated projection methodology guideline, or PMG, for circulation that staff reviewed as a guideline for the growth update. This past September, staff completed consultations on the proposed PMG with the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, or GOBA, and met with the province and other municipalities to discuss the PMG. Staff also consulted with GOBA on the preferred method of housing and employment projections that would be used in the growth update. This month, the comment submission, the comment submission closed on the proposed PMG, and staff submitted comments before the October 11th deadline. Today, the 2024 Rural Residential Land Survey is at the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, and as it will form part of the basis of existing supply for our growth update. In November and December, staff is consulting on housing and employment projections. Next slide, please. In January 2026, staff will bring forward recommendations for growth projections at joint PHC, ARAC, and Council. With the adoption of the growth projections, staff will begin work on the growth management strategy update, which will use mid-2024 vacant industrial land survey, greenfield residential land survey, and rural residential land survey as existing supply to determine whether additional settlement area land is required. In March 2026, staff will bring forward recommendations for the updated growth management strategy to joint PHC, ARAC, and Council. And if required, staff will also bring forward a recommendation for settlement area expansion scoring criteria. For the remainder of 2026, If required, staff will consult with candidate landowners as needed and score candidate expansion parcels. In Q2 2027, staff will bring forward recommendations for the updated growth projections OPA to joint PHC, ARAC, and Council. If adopted by Council, the updated growth projection OPA will then go to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval. So I'll now begin my 2024 Rural Residential Land Survey presentation. Next slide, please. So the Rural Residential Land Survey has been produced since pre-amalgamation. This report monitors the creation of new rural lots from 2022 to 2024. It monitors rural housing starts from 2022 to 2024. It also estimates rural residential supply to accommodate future growth. This 2024 report provides the existing rural residential land supply and forms the basis for rural residential land in the city for the new growth management projections that will be conducted by staff and submitted for committee and council consideration in March 2026. Next slide, please. As of June 2024, there were just over 10,000 potential rural dwelling units. This is comprised of an approximate 1,400 registered lots, which have building permits and are ready for construction. Just over 5,600 lots that are in the process with development review applications, and 3,000 lots that are zoned and ready for that are available for residential development. Next slide. Next slide, please. The official plan directs the focus of growth in the rural area towards the villages with a target of 71%. We are exceeding that target with a total of 81% of growth in the villages. Next slide, please. The official plan also requires that there be a 15-year supply of land available for residential development in the villages, with most of this growth being directed towards villages that have municipal servicing, namely Richmond, Greeley, Carp, and Manotick. Right now, there is a 16-year supply of residential development land in those villages, with a 49-year supply in the remaining villages. So in summary, there is no need to expand village boundaries to accommodate growth. Next slide, please. This map provides an indication of where the location of the villages in the rural area of Ottawa, with the development potential of each village, along with the years of supply remaining. In those villages where it's indicated that there is a greater than 1 year supply, that's because there was no rural development in those villages in the past 5 years to basically based on the current projections, based on the recent projection of 5 years, the number of year supply is unknown. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the 2024 rural residential supply is sufficient for 19 years within the villages, which exceeds the official plan recommendation for a minimum 15-year rural land supply. Also, 76% of the future potential in the villages is found in the municipally serviced villages of Manotick, Greeley, Richmond, and Carp, which is consistent with the official plan policy to direct growth towards these villages. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions?
There are questions from colleagues. Councillor Skalski?
Can you just explain a little bit what the implication of this means? So if in the future, someone comes forward with an application to expand the village boundary further, or does this imply that we would say no, that there's sufficient supply within the boundary, or what exactly are the implications of this information today?
Well, as it currently exists, we have sufficient supply, so there is no need to expand the village boundary. We are updating the growth projections to reassess where there might be available potential in the rural area to develop, so that could potentially change. But as it is right now, based on the findings of this report, there is no need to expand village boundaries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Kitts?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've raised this concern before, that the supply is really concentrated to a few villages. And if you look at the rural northeast, there's not a lot of potential there. And I am concerned about this because, you know, for the long-term sustainability of some of those smaller villages, we've seen villages lose, you know, banks and schools. And I worry about sort of the future of some of those smaller villages that have stagnated. So I was hoping you could just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the rural northeast.
So there is, sorry to the chair, council. There is the mandate of the official plan to direct the growth towards larger villages. And so we are seeing more development occur in those villages. There is available potential. There are units available in some of the villages, in smaller villages, also in the northeast. However, it's would be more up to developers to develop those lots. We can't, sorry, we don't direct people. We can't cause development to occur, but it's more up to developers to develop the lots that are in those villages. But there is potential for development in those villages.
Yeah, I did have a good chat with staff in advance, and I guess what I'm understanding is there's nothing we can point to explain why the villages that do have potential, like, they're not being moved on. There's nothing we can really point to explain that at this time.
Well, I mean, I think also servicing, I guess, in those villages would be one consideration where it's not as it doesn't exist. So it makes it more difficult to, I guess, develop those villages as it is as opposed to the larger municipally serviced villages.
Yeah, I still think as a city, we need a plan for those smaller villages to ensure their long-term sustainability. So I'll continue to sort of ruminate on that, but I appreciate this report in front of us. Thanks.
So Chair, I could also add to that. So we, as Ron talked about, our growth management strategy is coming up in March 2026. We will definitely look at what those growth projections would mean for those other villages, and in addition to those other villages that may not have as much supply. And we could look at what opportunities there may be to assist those villages with growth, understanding that there might be different factors on whether housing gets developed in those villages or not.
Great, thanks. I think, you know, once we have that bigger picture, hopefully we can sort of drill down into what we can do for those smaller, medium-sized villages. But thanks very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Luloff.
Thank you very much. I'll just pick up where my colleague left off there. So the reason for the concentration on the villages that you mentioned within the report is primarily because of municipal servicing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, Councillor.
Okay. You know, perhaps staff can consider, you know, to address sort of the villages in myself and Councillor Kitts' ward that are not municipally serviced. You know, we're quite constrained as to what sort of businesses and what sort of growth we can see within those villages, because we are essentially bound by our ability to dig wells and use septic systems. We had a potential for a compounding pharmacy in Cumberland Village. However, because it relies on a well and doesn't have you know, proper sewage facilities, that application would definitely not move forward. Although we do have an aging population that would probably benefit very much from a compounding pharmacy within the village. Perhaps staff may consider having a conversation with our friends at Economic Development about the possibility of a rural villages CIP or something like that, where you know, some businesses that wish to grow or expand, or perhaps bring new amenities to our rural villages that may perhaps spark an interest in further small scale development for these smaller villages to be able to grow and thrive. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Skalski has another question.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for obliging a second question. But you mentioned that there's servicing to these communities, but I'm thinking specifically for Greeley. Can you explain what, like, is there plans for future servicing in that area? Or are we just talking about the existing like communal wells that exist there for a couple of different subdivisions?
Chair, it's just existing services within Greeley, that one Shadow Ridge, and then any private services. That's the extent of what the supply is looking at.
Okay.
Councillor Kitts?
Apologies. Now I have a follow-up question. So on that, Greeley doesn't have the servicing of Richmond, for example. So can you explain why we're seeing some growth in Greeley and then other villages that are not serviced? That seems to be the barrier.
So Chair, there are a lot of factors that go with the growth to different villages. Greeley has a bit of a mass with some services. When I say by mass, it has a population threshold that some services would rely on. And so you get some growth related to that. And it's relatively close to the urban area. So there are other services that can be accessed close by as well. So that works in Greeley's favor. However, smaller villages that may not have that population threshold, maybe further away, interests of the landowners that have vacant land, those all factor into sort of the development potential for those villages. So each village is unique. We have 26 of them, as this committee is well aware of. They're all different situations that contribute to the ability for sort of the interest for development within them.
I'll just clarify, when I talk about development in smaller villages, I'm not talking large scale development. I'm not even necessarily advocating for servicing. I don't know if we want every village to turn into, a more suburban type feel, quite the opposite. But I do at the same time think we need a plan for moderate development, just so that these villages can sustain businesses and thrive as a 15-minute neighborhood. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. My turn. Never mind. Vice Chair, you go ahead and I'll go after.
I just wanted to build on some of the comments from my colleagues previously in terms of strategies for the really smaller villages. And I think the sort of catch-22 that we're talking about here is the need to sustain rural villages and have services there for people. And when I talk about services, I'm talking about things like banks and grocery stores, but also not expand beyond the should be good now.
Okay.
But also not expand beyond, where it would become no longer a rural village and wouldn't have that feel anymore. So I'm looking at, I had a town hall the other night in Carp, which was on this list and is serviced by a communal well system. And there's concern about what could happen if, services are run into Carp and what that would look like in the village. But I know there's, room for moderate growth in some of those smaller villages like Constance Bay and Kinburn and Goleta. And I think the room that is left to grow there could easily make up for units that don't get built in some of these other villages. But of course, there's the servicing aspect to it. So just wanted to comment on the fact that it would be lovely to have that discussion, because I think that would help accommodate growth while also taking the pressure off of some of these villages like Richmond and Greeley, which are growing really fast. So that's all I wanted to add to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now it is my turn. One of the challenges, of course, with servicing is that it brings a lot of intensive growth. And when you look at Manotick and Richmond, you see that suburban style growth that Councillor Kitts was referencing. Are we able to look at some smaller scale technologies that would allow some of the smaller villages to have moderate growth, but not the suburban style growth that comes with full municipal servicing?
Chair, just to clarify, technologies in terms of municipal water and wastewater.
Water and wastewater, particularly. Yeah.
So that's certainly something that planning staff can liaise with infrastructure staff to see what opportunities might be available for those other villages.
Marcia?
To the chair, just further to that, in the provincial government's Bill 60 package, there was some discussion there about trying to make it easier for what they call communal water wastewater systems. Frontenac, for example, is a place that is trying to get some modest housing development in their area that is not entirely well dependent, but doesn't have the money or the ability to run pipe. So it's a modular style development of communal water systems. So I know that our infrastructure colleagues are looking at that bill and the implications. So we certainly can have those conversations and come back to this committee at some point.
No, thank you very much. And I think that's important because I represent two of the villages that have taken, I believe, about 93% of the growth in the last few years out of all of rural Ottawa. So spreading that wealth out would be helpful. It also help the city catch up with some of the infrastructure projects we have that we're now having to start to prioritize in these faster growing villages. So as long as that's on the table, and it is from what I'm hearing, I'm pleased, because I think there are some communities that don't mind moderate growth that helps them stay viable. Because we want to keep our schools open. Munster, their school closed because the population wasn't growing. So if there was moderate growth in Munster, that school may have been able to remain open or could open up again in the future, which would be my hope. Similarly, if we're looking at bringing servicing to villages, that doesn't mean we're going to have the villages that we have today. If servicing is coming in, it's the developer's responsibility to pay for that, and they're going to want to maximize their investment. I understand that as well. So if there are ways to help bring moderate growth with smaller technologies that serve a smaller population base, I think that would likely receive a lot of support here at this committee and likely the next term of council. So thank you very much, colleagues, for the questions and staff for the presentation today. I appreciate that. The report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee and Council receive this report for information, and that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation detail section of this report. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Item 4.4, official plan amendment, South March Urban Expansion Area, which is in Ward 5. There is a presentation, so I'll ask staff to come to the table. Stream, are you giving the presentation today? Perfect. The table's yours.
Good morning, Chair, member of committee. My name is Stream Shen, and I'm the planner and file lead for the South March Urban Expansion Area official plan amendment application. Next slide, please. The application was submitted in October 2024, and as staff were working through the application, it was appealed for lack of decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Therefore, staff is before committee today to provide a recommendation for the application, which include a recommendation for staff to defend the city's position before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And we can skip the next two slides, please, as Ms. Warren has just spoke to the city's official plan growth plan. On October 16, 2024, Council approved a new process to review and evaluate urban boundary expansion applications, which include the following 5-step evaluation process. Step 1 is to assess existing servicing capacity. And if there's not enough existing capacity, step 2 includes the identification of new servicing capacity, generally the project that's required and their high-level cost estimate. And once the applicant has the following information, they're able to submit an official plan amendment application. Step 3 involves the assessment of land need to determine whether the city currently has enough land for future residential growth for the next 15 years. And only if there is a land need that's demonstrated, step 4 is completed to score the settlement area parcel analysis. So staff will be looking at scoring the expansion area based on the most efficient and cost-effective infrastructure, integration and connectivity to existing community, proximity to existing services and amenities, and also avoidance of agricultural resource area and other environmental conflicts. Next slide, please. The South March Urban Expansion Area is generally bounded by Old Second Line Road to the west, Old Carp Road to the south, Cameron Harvey Drive to the north, and the decommissioned and now city-owned Beachburg Rail Corridor to the east. The existing Kanata North urban boundary defines its interior edge. Next slide. The application has been submitted by Novatech on behalf of Claridge Homes, which represent the South March landowners group. The landowners group include Claridge, Mattamy, Minto, Regional, and Uniform Urban Developments. The South March Urban Expansion Area encompass approximately 233 hectares of land and is estimated to be developed with 4,000 units within the South March community. This area calculation excludes the existing rural estate subdivisions, which you can see on the map is part of the proposed urban expansion boundary, however, does not form part of the proposed development lands. Next slide, please. The requested official plan amendment is to change the existing designation from rural countryside under the rural transect into a neighborhood designation subject to a future neighborhood overlay under the suburban transect, bringing the land into the city's urban boundary. Next slide. So city completed step 1 and 2 of the analysis process for servicing capacity review. And the conclusion is that for water servicing, there is currently insufficient existing or planned system capacity. The development will require a new water main and pressure zone reconfiguration at an estimated cost of $23.8 million. For wastewater servicing, a secondary emergency overflow is required at an estimated cost of $2.8 million. Various transportation improvements will also be required and is currently under discussion. The assessment confirmed that the area can be serviced. However, the necessary upgrades are not currently identified in the city's infrastructure master plan or transportation master plan. Accordingly, a memorandum of understanding is required to demonstrate the applicant's commitment to fund the off-site capital works and any potential operational costs for early transit service. To date, no such memorandum of understanding has been received. Next slide, please. The city proceeded with evaluating steps 3 of the land need assessment. The mid-2024 Greenfield Residential Land Survey, which was received by the Planning and Housing Committee on October 1st, concluded that based on the current official plan growth projection, the applicable 15-year timeframe requires 1,268 net residential hectares of land. And as of July of 2024, the designated and available greenfield land supply comprised of 1,582 hectares, which translate into 18.7 years of supply, exceeding the PPS minimum requirement. There is also an additional 339 net hectares of residential land on future neighborhood expansion area that was added as part of the 2022 new official plan, which will be added to the 2025 count. The reason they weren't added to the 2024 count is because they only initiated their secondary planning process after the cutoff. So with that addition, it brings our total supply to 25 years, well exceeding the 15-year minimum threshold. Next slide, please. Step 4 has not been completed, given that no requirement for land need has been demonstrated. However, the same parcels have been previously scored in the 2021 Gross Management Report, and it is not anticipated that the results will be significantly different if the scoring were to be redone today. All the lands met the minimal threshold for transportation and servicing criteria and were previously recommended as Category 1 land for inclusion. Next slide. So in summary, the application is not consistent with the provincial planning statement. It does not conform to the city's official plan. The land need hasn't been demonstrated, and a memorandum of understanding has not been provided with commitment to fund the required site servicing and transportation upgrade. Therefore, staff is recommending the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council to refuse the official plan amendment to bring the subject line into the urban boundary and direct staff to defend the city's position before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And that concludes my presentation. We're available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions to staff, there is one delegate who's registered to speak on this, Ursula. I don't know if Ursula's in the room or online. Online. Morning, Ursula.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Wanted to briefly speak to the question. We actually requested that this matter be deferred for consideration for a short period of time. The reason being, as Mr. Shen has stated, the application was submitted in October, November of 2024. Since then, the city has more vigorously commenced its own process of updating the growth management projections, which we now understand is coming forward in January and into Q1 of next year. So at this time, my client and consultants sought deferral of this consideration just so we could have a better understanding and discussion with staff even as to what that process is going to entail in terms of the growth management updates. So it was indeed deferred at Planning Committee yesterday, although it is more properly before ARAC because this is seeking inclusion from rural lands into the urban area.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. And just before I ask the question, I'll just let you know that there is no deferral motion on the table here today, but do appreciate your comments on that. And in terms of your desire to do that, when I looked at the letter, which came in at 4 p.m. the day before Planning and Housing Committee meeting, obviously didn't have a lot of time to contemplate that or look at that before the meeting started the very next day. And I think that hurt our ability to have a debate on it. So I'm wondering, and when I look at the clients you're representing and the planners that are on this file, there's some, extremely competent planners with a lot of experience and who enjoy a lot of respect around the council table. And so I have a hard time with understanding how it got to the point where you sent a letter to committee members, less than 12 hours before the committee meeting was to start, or certainly within a limited period of time. So how did that come to be? Was this a brainwave at the last second and you were asked to send a letter, or what happened in terms of there being such a delay in receiving that letter?
Through the chair, part of the problem we have, and this is not directed to any one person in particular or staff or what have you, is when reports are received very late, as they typically are, less than a week before, it takes time for us to coordinate our comments with our clients and consultants. And so we were, as much as the report, the conclusions were not a surprise, to be perfectly blunt. We were still contemplating our response and how we wanted to go forward with that. So the letters were indeed submitted prior to committee. It was within the time frame as requested by the committee. It is short, but part of the whole process is if reports received earlier, we could get comments submitted earlier. And so that is part of that explains the timing of our submission. The application was submitted in 2024. We stand by the conclusions of our consultants. Our consultants are very well versed in this, both in the Ottawa area, Eastern Ontario, and even the province. It is our submission that the growth management analysis that was undertaken by our consultants is indeed accurate, applying Ministry of Finance numbers, applying growth management strategies that will better reflect what is happening here in Ottawa.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't have any more questions for the delegate.
Thank you. Any other questions for the delegate? Ursula, thank you very much for coming and delegating today. Are there questions to staff? Vice Chair?
Just one. I think your report is extremely clear, so I don't need to ask any questions about the details of the report, but just wanted to confirm something that was discussed at yesterday's committee, and that is the fact that the decision that's been made and the recommendation by staff, regardless of any changes that might come over the next few months, the position of staff on this particular application will not change before 2027. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the councillor. So our position has been that with all urban expansions, even though the Planning Act allows the developer to apply, We believe that council has given us clear direction on a process that we are undertaking that would have us bringing a successive group of reports over the next year that ultimately culminate into some council decisions in the first quarter of 2027 to assess lands. So when we get these urban expansion applications, we're working with the applicant, but we are not intending on bringing anything forward until that was complete. This report is here today because they appealed us for a non-decision. So should council wish to entertain their request for a deferral, that would require a motion. We don't object to the motion to defer, should you wish to put one on the table, but we stand behind our no, and we are recommending against this urban expansion.
Thank you very much for that answer. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks so much. So given that the other committee deferred this, voted to defer this, and it's now before us as what seemingly looks like as another item, how does this work then? So if we don't defer it and they've deferred it, does this still go to council? Where do we sit procedurally on this?
I'll ask a member of the clerk's office to clarify.
Mr. Chair, the recommendation from this committee would rise, and we would note how planning dealt with the matter, but whatever this committee would recommend would rise, and we would make note of that, and both minute extracts would be attached to the council report.
It's quite a convoluted process, isn't it? So if this is something that was meant to be before ARAC, procedurally, shouldn't it come here first for us to debate and then for it to rise to planning committee for them to decide whether to defer it or to vote on it? It seems that having the two processes happening at the same time is quite convoluted. Is this normal?
So I'll start, Mr. Chair, I'll start off with the second question from the councillor.
Sure.
It does happen that there are the omnibus rezoning is a report that was before both committees. It does happen that there are reports sent independently to two committees, and from time to time there are contradictory recommendations that come out of it. And Mr. Tremblay has given you the process that there is for dealing with this. This ARAC is charged with urban expansion matters where the lands are designated agricultural resource. These lands are not designated agricultural resource. Therefore, they fall for public hearing purposes into the jurisdiction of Planning and Housing Committee. However, because of the rural nature of these particular lands and the fact that they are used, I understand, for agricultural purposes, even though they're not designated such, it was determined that it was appropriate to bring this to this committee for its input also.
No, that's wonderful, and we appreciate that. Rural matters should come to ARAC for sure. So if procedurally the committee that has primary say is Planning and Housing Committee, does the deferral motion that will rise to council as well have precedence over what we decide today?
Mr. Chair, and I invite Mr. Tremblay to jump in if I get this wrong. Effectively, both recommendations will be before council, and council will have to make the final decision as to the process.
Oh, that's exciting. Ms. Tremblay, that's right. You're not along. Okay, great. Okay, I'll cede the floor to Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chair, just to confirm, because I would never contradict Mr. Mark.
Me neither.
So technically, if this committee takes a position, that will rise, but we will give a note and identify for council that planning deferred the matter. So technically, there's no recommendation from planning at this time, but we will make council aware that planning deferred it, but that if this committee makes a recommendation, that will be before council.
Fascinating. All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Fascinating, exciting, all the adjectives I'd use to describe the Rural Affairs Committee. Every item on the agenda. I'm not seeing any other questions. So the report recommendations are that 1, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council refuse the official plan amendment to include the subject lands within the urban boundary and to designate them as neighborhood with a future neighborhood overlay under the suburban transect and direct staff to defend the city's position at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report be included as part of the brief explanation in the summary of written and oral public submissions to be prepared by the Office of the City Clerk and submitted to council in the report titled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act. Explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of November 12th, 2025, subject to submissions received between this publication, the publication of this report and the time of council's decision. Is this item carried? Carried. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much to staff. Item 4.5, minor zoning bylaw amendment, 6158 Rideau Valley Drive. There is a staff presentation, so I'll ask Planner Gilbert to come forward with Mr. Brown. And we do have several registered speakers, so we'll do the staff presentation. We'll move to delegations. We'll ask questions of delegates, and then we'll go back to questions to staff afterwards. All right, team, as soon as you're ready to go, I'll cede the floor to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Jerica Gilbert. I'm a development review planner with the rules section, and I'm here to present on the proposed rezoning of 6158 Rideau Valley Drive to expand permissions for existing home-based businesses. Staff are recommending refusal of this application. So the lot in question on our next slide is a farm property located a few kilometers south of the village of Manotick and west of the Rideau River, as marked by the star on the image. The official plan designation is agricultural resource area, and the zoning is AG 147R. The 147R was added through a site-specific exception in 2003, which was then known as the A1-8 zone, to permit a retail store limited to a craft shop of 115 square meters on the property. And in the next slide, we have satellite imagery of the entire lot, which is about 60 hectares in size. Surrounding land uses are agricultural and residential in nature. And this property is quite well known in the area because in addition to being a cash crop and berry farm, it's also the location of Miller's Farm and Market, which is a seasonal pick-your-own market and farm outlet. In addition to the farm and Miller's Farm and Market, there are two other businesses located on the property, R&S Snow Service and Miller's Trucking and Excavation. The activities of Miller's Trucking and Excavation prompted bylaw and regulatory services in 2021 to issue a notice of violation after noise complaints from the neighbors led to an investigation that found that this particular land use to be in conflict with the zoning bylaw. The landowners have pursued this zoning bylaw amendment application to bring the uses back into conformity with the bylaw. So before we delve into the requested zoning specifically for 6158 Rideau Valley Drive, I just want to take a moment to review what land uses are generally permitted on prime agricultural lands, which in the Ottawa area we call through the agricultural resource area designation. Goes without saying that the primary use is meant to be agricultural in nature. So anything that involves regular farm practices such as growing crops or raising livestock is permitted in what we want to see. That being said, it's also recognized that a diversified rural economy can involve secondary uses on farms, and these are separated into two separate categories. We have agricultural related uses, which deal with anything that supports or processes farm products. So examples of agricultural related uses could be grain elevators, abattoirs, or farmers markets. Meanwhile, on-farm diversified uses recognize the ways in which farmers can choose to diversify their income through secondary and complementary ventures on their farms. OFDUs can look like anything from agritourism initiatives such as barn tours or corn mazes, or home occupations like daycares or vehicle repairs. The key is that OFDUs are secondary to farming, limited in scale, and not disruptive to the wider agricultural system. And in this example, Miller's Farm and Market is actually a good case where we have agricultural related uses where they sell produce that they grow on their farm in the market. as well as an on-farm diversified use where they sell products and crafts from elsewhere. So in the next slide, it's a bit busy, but we can see from the concept map supplied by the applicant that there is quite a bit going on at 6158 Rideau Valley Drive. The home-based businesses and market have grown over time and expanded across the site. Of note is the heavy equipment storage on the left-hand side of this photo that is approximately 3,160 square meters in size, as well as the landscaping material storage on the right-hand side close to the road that's taking up another 2,095 square meters. It should be noted that the provincial guidelines for permitted uses in prime agricultural areas state that generally landscaping and trucking yards should generally not be considered appropriate uses on farms given the uses that they generate. So with that in mind, on the next slide, based off this concept and the activities taking place, the applicant has requested the following amendments to the home-based business provisions only in the zoning bylaw: that 51 heavy vehicles be permitted instead of 3, that 5,255 square meters of outdoor storage be permitted instead of 100 square meters, removal of the maximum size limit of 115 square meters for the craft shop from that 2003 rezoning, and permission to sell items not produced on the premises. So staff disagree with the applicant that these changes are minor in nature and from both a numerical point of view as well as an impact on surrounding properties. And a quick note on the craft shop. So this terminology is from the 2003 rezoning and is applied to Miller's Farm and Market. The applicant's concept plan lists the building as 102 square meters, but that doesn't seem to include the shop's canopy and roof overhang. And it's also not clear if some of the products that are being sold at the market are extending back into the greenhouses. There's been a lot of back and forth between staff and the applicant on what uses are occurring and where on the site, but there's still a bit of gray area, which we'll see in the next slide. So further on that point, staff have disagreed with the applicant's concept map and measurements of the area taken up by the non-agricultural uses. As we can see in the image on the left, it's not uncommon for the peak season for Miller's Farm and Market for the front yard to be used as parking. The province's guidelines do ask that municipalities consider temporary parking areas in calculations for on-farm diversified uses and agricultural related uses. And further, in the right-hand image, it's clear that there has been some areas cut in the wood lot further back in the property that appears to be utilized for some form of equipment storage. The applicant has declined to comment on this area in their application because the focus of the requested rezoning is only on the front portion of the property. So on the next slide, I've just pulled some images from Miller's Farm and Market website to illustrate some of the non-farm uses taking place on the property. So some of the heavy vehicles that are being used for the landscaping business, as well as the garden center that appears to be in one of the greenhouses. So finally, staff are recommending refusal of this application on the basis that the home-based businesses on the property are operating at a scale that is not appropriate for a prime agricultural area. Ottawa's official plan does encourage on-farm diversified uses, subject to limitations on scale, size, and location on the property being determined by the zoning bylaw. Miller's Trucking and Excavation has grown to a point where it would be better suited in an urban or village industrial park or a commercial lot. It is clear from the province's and the city's planning policies that on-farm diversified uses should be limited on how much they can grow in favor of protecting agricultural land and the rural character of the area. If this application is refused, city staff are prepared to continue working with the property owner to ensure that these businesses operate at a scale that is appropriate for on-farm diversified uses and home-based businesses. While it's possible that should the owners wish to continue the expansion of Miller's trucking and excavation, that some of these operations will need to relocate off-site to a more appropriate property. The city wants to ensure the continued success of Miller's Farm and Market as a place for Ottawa residents to experience being on a farm and seeing where their food is grown. We want to ensure the integrity of Miller's Farm as agricultural land and to ensure it's safe for generations to come. So thank you. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to ask our first delegate to come down, Roberto Abucho, and Mr. and Mrs. Merritt will follow them. So there's a chair here, and we can try to find another one if more than one folks come down. It's always exciting when we have to find more chairs for committee. We'll let the first delegate go, and then if there are questions, we'll go to you, and then following that, we'll go to the second delegates. So the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Roberto Aburto. I'm a municipal lawyer retained by Kathy and Ian Merritt. So these are the neighbors that live adjacent to the Millers. I do have a PowerPoint presentation if that could be put up. That would be helpful. These folks have been living with these disruptions for many years, and you'll hear directly from Kathy about some of the experiences in terms of the noise specifically, but certainly I know there's traffic and vibration impacts as well. And just a complete disregard for the rules. These charges arise from a notice of violation from 2021, arising from complaints from 2019. And I know the matters before the courts as well. And I appreciate that as members of ARAC, you're focusing on the land use planning merits, as you should. You've heard from the staff. Our clients also retained an independent land use planner who provided a land use planning opinion. So I commend that to you. It's consistent with the findings of staff and corroborates that. If we go to the next slide, just from the aerial photo, you did see that some, but the red circle in the middle, there are heavy industrial trucks that head to and from that space consistently, frequently leaving in the morning and coming back in the evening. Some of the operations on site include the sale of soils, and the soils are brought in from off-site. The orange circle shows where my clients live. And if we go to the next slide, just with the limited time, we thought sort of a picture says 1,000 words. So the picture on the left shows the dumping and hauling of soil for the Big Yellow Bag business, which is a commercial business that supplies soil to local consumers. And the picture on the right shows the hopper for bagging, which creates a tremendous amount of noise and operates consistently from the spring to the fall. And again, these are sold to residential purchasers largely. And so it's not an agricultural use. Next slide. And on this slide, the picture on the left, again, I think staff spoke to it, but again, the trucks are coming in and out, and that's not a part of this application. So while even the numerical elements and the impacts are so great, it's actually understated when you look at what the actual violations are of the bylaw. It's sort of unclear that even if they got this rezoning, how that would help them on the charges, because this is not included in the relief and is clearly not an agricultural use, and certainly at an intensity that overwhelms what would be an agricultural use, and certainly is not ancillary. I won't go to slides 5 and 6. It's just more of the policies, and you've got staff's report and you've got Mr. Barton's report, but I urge you to listen to my clients and to follow staff's recommendation to refuse the zoning bylaw amendment application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you very much. Mr. and Mrs. Merritt, you both have 5 minutes together, but if we go a little over, I'll try to be a little generous. So the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. My name is Kathy Merritt, and this is my husband, Ian. We live at 6168. Oh, I do have a presentation.
Yep, just talk and they'll put it.
Okay. We live at 6168 Rideau Valley Drive, which abuts the Miller Farm on our north and west sides. I would like to speak about how this zoning bylaw amendment would impact our personal lives. This is based on our experience over the last more than 5 years when the businesses have been operating as if this amendment were already in effect. We have been living here since we purchased the property in December 1982. Millers purchased the farm in 1991. Our planned use on the property was to have space to establish vegetable and fruit gardens and to raise our children in a healthy environment. Naturally, working the gardens involves spending a good deal of time out of doors. The output from our gardens is primarily for our own and our children's use, with surplus being donated to the Miller's Oven restaurant in Manotick. Could I have the next slide, please? For many years, we lived in peace with our neighbors, but the ability to use and enjoy our property started to be adversely affected with the establishment of their trucking and excavation and their big yellow bag businesses. At peak season of the big yellow bag business, at least 2 tractor trailers fitted with large containers each go out 4 times a day to get bulk soil, which is brought back and bagged before being delivered to customers. Besides the tractor trailers, the operation involves the use of front-end loaders, the bagging machine or hopper, and delivery trucks. Cargo transported by the trucking and excavation business consists of such things as their excavating equipment going to an outside job site, or concrete highway dividers, quarried limestone, and the like. Certainly not farm produce nor products produced on the farm. In both businesses, noise is the main problem, with some additional impact due to dust and diesel fumes. Next slide. The sources of noise in these operations are the engines of the trucks used to bring soil and dump it and to transport other goods and equipment, the dumping and loading of landscaping materials in the garden center involving the dump trucks and the loaders, the motors of the loaders used to fill the big yellow bags, as well as their backup beepers, which are engaged every few seconds to move both loose soil and filled bags, the vibration noise of the hopper filling the bags, the clanking of the heavy equipment being moved around the yard, and the hosing of the equipment at the washing station. It is the quality of the noise which is disturbing more than its loudness. Except for the piercing sound of the backup beepers, these are mainly low-frequency noises which travel not only through the air, but through the ground and do not attenuate significantly with distance. In addition to the noise in the yard, trucks pulling out into the road have to go through multiple gear changes to get up to driving speed. The noise at each shift is loud, and the vibrations can be felt in our windows. This likely affects not only our house, which is set well back from the road, but any of the houses along the road for 1 kilometer or more, especially those that are close to the road. Although most of the activity is during the daytime, I have frequently heard the trucks at all times of night and early morning. Next slide, please. We have never had an issue with Miller's Farm as a farm operation. Even though it does get somewhat noisy during pumpkin season, it is just the noise of people enjoying themselves. However, the addition of these non-farming businesses has resulted in an active heavy equipment yard operating year-round. The goods transported by Miller's Trucking and Excavation are not generally goods produced on the farm, nor is the soil, which is sold in big yellow bags. If these operations were relocated to a site already zoned for such businesses, the farming operation could continue with no need for a zoning amendment. Our intention when we purchased our property was to live here until we were no longer able to manage the activities that we now enjoy. If the zoning amendment is approved and these businesses and potentially other similarly impactful industries are allowed to operate at this location, we may be forced to move. We have spent several decades building what we have here and do not likely have enough remaining lifetime to do it all again. If such a move becomes necessary for the sake of our mental and physical health, we will consider that we have been driven from our home.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegates? Mr. Mayor, is there anything that you'd like to add? You ended early, so.
Well, this has gone on for a very long time, so it's driving us crazy. And so I've had numerous dialogues with bylaw services and planning over the years and the respective counselors. So I'm frustrated that this seems to be able to continue indefinitely without any accountability.
That's it.
Well, there's probably a lot more,
Okay,
but
okay.
you know.
I just want to make sure I give you the time. Perfect. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you for your delegations. The next delegate that we have, and we've got a group here together, Ryan Polton, Murray Chone, Michael Polwin, and Ronald Miller. So technically, we all have 5 minutes, but I'll try to do the same. If we go a little over, I'll be lenient. And if there is a presentation, I'll ask that I get put up on the screen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you for inviting us to speak to you this morning. I just want to do a brief introduction, so my 5 minutes will be quite short. Most of the members of the committee know who I am, but for the record, my name is Murray Chown. I'm a senior planning advisor at Novatech. With me this morning is my colleague Ryan Polton, who is a planner and project manager with Novatech, and he will be making the presentation for us this morning with respect to the planning merits of the application that we filed with the city. Also with us is Michael Polwin from Gowlings, a well-known municipal lawyer, obviously, in town. He may have some comments with respect to the submissions of Mr. Alberto, and he may also provide some insight on the topic of legal non-conforming uses. And of course, most importantly, we have Mr. Miller with us at the far end of the table, well known in the neighborhood, the owner of the property, and our client. Lastly, I want the members of the committee to know that there are a number of people in the room who have not asked to speak, but they're here in support of Mr. Miller. And I just asked them all to stand up for a moment so you are aware of who they are. These people are all—
Thank you. Please take your seats.
These people are all residents of Rideau Township and are here to strongly support Mr. Miller and his business and his farming activities, but also to support the application that's before you today. So with that introduction, I'll turn things over to my colleague, Mr. Polton, and he will make a presentation if the staff can pull it up, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair, my name is Ryan Polton. I'm a planner at Novatech. Novatech acted as the agent on behalf of the owners of 6158 Rideau Valley Drive to prepare and file the zoning bylaw amendment application being considered this morning. Next slide, please. I'm just gonna, okay. So this first slide is an air photo of the property. The subject property itself is identified in yellow. I would also note the adjacent properties in magenta are also farmed by the Millers. The total area of the three properties is approximately 440 acres. It's generally located between the villages of Manotick and Cars, and it's just south of the Rideau View Golf Course. Next slide, please. This is a zoomed in air photo, and you can see the three properties are principally used for agriculture. The vast majority of lands, farmland for crops. I would note the farmhouse, market, greenhouse, and accessory buildings on the subject property are all concentrated near Rideau Valley Drive. There are two home-based businesses operating on the property. That's Miller's Trucking and Excavation and R&S Snow Services. These businesses have been in operation on the property for 13 and 34 years respectively, and they help to supplement the farm's income. The market that's on the property, I would note, is not considered a home-based business. Next slide, please. So this is an excerpt from Schedule B9 of the official plan. The property's designated agricultural resource area. Next slide, please. Sorry if there's duplication between this presentation and the city's presentation. So this figure shows the existing conditions of the property. Specifically, the area in magenta that's highlighted is proposed to be rezoned and is subject to this application. Please note that the lands used for outdoor storage of landscaping materials near Rideau Valley Drive are associated with the market. They're sold through the market and therefore are not associated with the home-based business. Lands used for heavy equipment storage are set back away from Rideau Valley Drive. They're just to the west of the area, on the western side of the area proposed to be rezoned. This area is partially screened from view along Rideau Valley Drive, as well as it is screened from view from the existing buildings from the residential property to the south. No changes are proposed to the use of the property through the zoning bylaw amendment application. Next slide, please. So this is our requested rezoning, and this differs from the city's slide. The city slide represents what we initially came in with in terms of the application. This is now what we're proposing. So I would note the purpose of this application is to bring the existing home-based businesses into compliance with the requirement of the zoning bylaw. It does not have to.
YouTube.
It's his broker calling.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Okay. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to bring the existing home-based businesses on the property into compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. It is not specifically for on-farm diversified uses. So in terms of our request, first, we're asking to remove the limitation on a retail store limited to a craft shop. A craft shop is not a defined term in the current zoning bylaw. It was implemented through a previous zoning bylaw amendment in 2003, but that term is inconsistent with policies of the official plan as well as provincial guidelines with regard to on-farm diversified uses associated with the retail shop. Second is, despite subsection 26(1), a maximum of 51 heavy vehicles are permitted to be parked on the property. The heavy vehicles include tractors and trailers and other miscellaneous equipment that are used by the farm operation and then seasonally, when not in use, used by the excavation company, so a home-based business. And finally—
Mr. Polton, I'll just get you to wrap in about 30 seconds.
Okay, and then the last one is subsection 12810, a maximum of 3,160 square meters permitted outdoor storage associated with a home-based business. This is the heavy equipment vehicle storage. Next slide, please. I've just got this slide and a concluding slide. This figure, so the city's report references on-farm diversified uses. This figure here, done quickly in area in blue, shows the land used for on-farm diversified uses. I would note it also includes the market. This is approximately 7.1 acres. This is 1.6% of the overall 440 acres of the agricultural properties farmed by Miller's Farm on Rideau Valley Drive. My last slide, please. So, in conclusion, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment will bring the existing home-based businesses into compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. No changes are proposed to the current use of the property. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is appropriate for the development of the subject property and represents good land use planning. We ask that ARAC refuse city staff's recommendations and to recommend to City Council they adopt the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I know there are others at the table, so perhaps there'll be some questions for the delegate. I see Councillor Luloff with his hand up first. Councillor?
Yeah, my question is for Mr. Pollowin. Do these activities that are occurring on this property, in your opinion, and the vehicles that are being used qualify as on-farm use?
Just need to turn the microphone.
Yes.
Okay. That's it for this delegate. Is the applicant themselves going to be delegating today as well, Mr. Chair?
The applicant is sitting at the table, so if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Miller.
Okay, Mr. Miller, how many people do these uses and your other operations employ?
We have approximately 10 people that is full-time, and then we have several people that is seasonal for whatever happens to be going on. Like if snow season's there would be probably around 35 or 40 people driving tractors and snow shovelers that go out and help people do their sidewalks and stuff like that. And then our seasonal works on the farm. We have a lot of part-time staff. They're that does the work on the farm, and the retail part at the front of the sales shed, but they're all part-time.
Okay. How long have you been farming for?
35 years. I've worked in the city for, not for the city, but I've worked in the city for 25 years in the mapping business. And then I bought this farm to grow it. And then in 2008, my son was working in the city doing heating and air conditioning. And he wasn't happy doing that. He'd like to farm. He wanted to farm. So I said, okay, you can come home and farm, but we'll have to expand the operation to be able to justify to support 2 families. And that's what we've done. And
how much total land do you farm?
about 440 acres. We have another farm also.
You have another farm as well?
Yes, we have another farm out at Richmond.
Okay.
There's 62 acres there, which approximately about 45 to 50 of it is farmable.
Okay. What percentage, again, of the farmland that you actively farm does this land require for this secondary operation? Like how much, what percentage of that land, again, is used for this secondary operation?
If we may assist, it's 1.6%.
6%. Okay.
1.6%.
1.6. Okay, thank you. How difficult is it to maintain your farming business or your businesses if you focused only on farming?
There's no way he could exist, because today you have to have thousands of acres to, like all the farmers that are in our area that do large crops, they farm at least 3,000 acres of corn and soybeans.
What
So you have to
measures?
have a substitute to keep the farm going, to be able to make the payments, to buy the equipment. And, you know, the price of equipment, like a tractor today used to be $100,000. Today, that tractor is $200 and some thousand dollars a day.
Yeah.
Today.
So the supplementary sources of income.
That's detrimental for keeping the farm going.
Yeah, it allows you to keep the farming business going. Okay. Do you have land that some of these operations could be relocated to so that this would come into compliance?
No, because the property around it is all zoned the same.
Okay.
We can spread it out. And if the neighbor had came to us and asked us if we could move some stuff or something, I would be willing to do that, but he never came to me in a peaceful.
I'm just going to ask that we keep our comments to the planning application.
Okay.
Okay, fair play. I mean, I understand that there's also like the undertones of a neighbor dispute here, so yeah, we'll keep it just to the facts, I suppose. What measures, if any, have you taken to reduce the noise on the property? I mean, I know that there's some things that exist, like broadband backup alarms, that sort of thing. Are these things that you've considered or things that you're willing to consider?
Yes, we've said we'll change whatever is recommended to us. We'll work with you. This is why we've been working so long on this proposal to see if we could come to an agreement that would be okay with everybody.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there are recommendations that came out of the gradient wind report that was submitted with staff, specifically with respect to relocating the soil bagging equipment. Right now, there's direct line of sight, I think, from that bagging location to the neighbor's property to the south. Gradient Wind has recommended a relocation of that operation further west, so to be adequately screened from the neighbor to the south. And they've done further analysis to confirm that that would mitigate the noise that's being generated by that operation. So there's clearly steps that we can take and that Mr. Miller, I think, is committing to take to address those issues.
Okay, I'll let my colleagues ask questions, and I'll probably have some comments after this, but thank you for answering my questions today.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Skalski.
Yeah, I just have really one question. I want to understand.
Sorry,
um,
Mr. Chair, I apologize for interrupting. I just wonder if I could make my submission before we go fully into questions to the delegates.
No, we'll go to questions, and if there's a question, we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you just describe, when you found out that your property was out of compliance, what the experience, like procedurally working with the city, what you were asked to do, and sort of the steps that led us to where we are today?
Mr. Chair, if I may, that will form part of my submission.
Pardon? Yes.
Oh, can I answer that?
You can.
Okay. The charges were brought, I believe now 3 to 4 years ago, which is when we were first retained. This has been an exercise in education. I do want to speak to the referral to the charges by Mr. Roberto, which in our view was completely inappropriate. Charges have been brought, yes. Has there been a conviction? No. And we are confident that either the city will end up withdrawing those charges, or there will be no conviction registered, which I will speak to when I get to speak on legal non-conforming uses.
Councillor Kitts?
Just to ensure that we have everything clear, you are asking for an exemption to allow 5,255 square meters for outdoor storage?
So I can clarify. So our original application requested that number. It included the landscaping supplies that are stored outside in the front yard of the property. Since that time, it's learned that those materials are sold by the market on the property. That transaction's handled by the on-farm diversified use, which is a retail store. It is not sold by a home-based business. The provisions speak to outdoor storage associated with home-based businesses. Therefore, we've revised the application to reduce the requested outdoor storage associated with home-based businesses to, I believe it's 3,165 square meters.
3,165. And you are asking for permission to allow 51 heavy vehicles?
Yes, that is correct. Tractors, tractor trailers, those are all considered heavy vehicles. It's all used for the farm operations during the growing season. Off season, when they're not in use or in use by other adjacent farm operations, they're used to support both both home-based businesses on the property, including snow clearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask a couple questions, is there any others? Mr. Paulowin, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Thank you, sir. We recently learned of a statutory declaration, actually 2 of them, executed by the former owners of the property prior to the Millers, and covering the area, the timeframe starting in 1984, so 41 years ago. The property has been used for both home-based business and commercial uses, including the storage of construction materials owned by an unrelated company, the storing of the same company's mobile construction sheds. And that the home-based business started in 84. The entire period of ownership of the property by the Palmarios, starting in December 5th, 1986, operated these commercial operations in storage. I was not aware of it. Frankly, it was sitting in a binder on my desk that I started going through in preparation for this hearing this morning. All of which is to say, when I indicated earlier that the charges will either end up being withdrawn by the city because of the legal non-conforming use, or if we end up having to go to trial, that the millers will likely be successful because they are not, in fact, contravening a zoning bylaw. And truth be told, it may well be that, speaking in an orthodox way, they don't require this rezoning. Having said that, they are anxious to regularize this, which is why the rezoning is still appropriate, and we would ask that it be recommended by this committee to council. But 40 years of legal non-conforming rights, which frankly the staff report didn't take into account. Mr. Roberto's planner didn't take into account. And we've seen the report. And so at the end of the day, I don't know how there could be a concern that is recent when these commercial uses and trucks and all of that have been on this property for approaching 40 years. And those are all my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for the delegate or delegates, Vice Chair?
I mean, how long has there been 51 heavy vehicles on the property?
There isn't 51 now. At maximum, there would be 51, but the issue of legal non-conforming rights provides, or the law on legal non-conforming rights provides that you can intensify the use over time, provided it doesn't change the character of the use. And so at the end of the day, the zoning bylaw doesn't control the number of trucks, which, as I say, 51 is a maximum. It's not a constant by any means. The Supreme Court of Canada has spoken very clearly on the issue of legal non-conforming rights in saying that intensification of a legal non-conforming right is entirely appropriate so long as it is not something that changes the character. And can I tell you how many trucks were on site storing and retrieving construction materials in 1986, or storing and retrieving mobile construction sheds in 1986? No, I can't.
So then no way to really know how it's evolved since then, really.
What the law says is I don't have to show that. So if there had been 47 trucks before and there are 51 now, I don't know that anybody was out there counting the trucks in 1986.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think I'm done with that line of questioning.
Thank you. Any other questions from colleagues? Councillor Luloff?
Is this the final delegation?
No, there's one more after this.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see any other questions for you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next delegate, once the chairs free up, will be Chris Napier. So Mr. Napier, you'll have 5 minutes to address committee. You just need to turn your microphone on there. Thank you very much.
We good? Okay, thank you. Hi, my name's Chris Napier. I'm a longtime Manotick resident businessman. Ron and Susie and have been a very positive part of our village for decades. The amount of things that they've done for our community are beyond huge. Just Monday I was at Miller's Farm where Steve Reed, the president CEO of the CHEO Foundation, attended with his team and came out to accept a check generously donated from Ron and Susie for $5,500 that they raised for CHEO. Just one of many good deeds that they have done. They did snow removal for over 7 years at my church, St. Leonard's Catholic Church in Manotick, when finances at the church were tough. And they did this for free, and they're not even Catholic. The list goes on and on. For years, snow plowing for over 2,000 local homes, etc. The Millers and their farm operation is a huge and positive asset to our village and our community. And we hope that this can continue for many years to come. They are salt of the earth people. I could go on and on about what they've done for the community, for charities, etc. And I just wanted to let people know that's what they're all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't go away. There might be a question for you. Any questions for the delegate? Not seeing any. You're released. Thank you. Everyone's always in a rush to come up, but in a bigger rush to leave. I'll ask staff to come back to the table. We may have some questions for staff. I'll ask the vice chair to take over for a minute. It looks like Councillor Lulof's first.
Just give staff a second to get settled there. All right. Okay, this is quite a contentious one, and I can imagine that you probably feel that too. We heard from Ottawa's probably most preeminent municipal lawyer that this will, likely fail if appealed, and also asserting that these uses are in actuality, despite what's written in the report, to be in compliance. Can you respond to that in a comprehensive manner for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So you're right. This is a hard one that came in just based on the businesses involved and their just how much is going on here. So staff did do an investigation when this came in, kind of looking into the claim of legal nonconforming. And we did ask the applicant multiple times. There is actually a formal process at the city, because although you by nature have legal non-conforming rights, like no one has to assign them to you or anything like that. But when you do have a planning application, you need to be able to adequately justify. Now, the former construction storage materials, I did notice in old reports that being referenced internally. I think what's important to understand is the Township of Rideau zoning bylaw, which dated back, apologies, 74, 76, so prior to the 80s. This particular lot in that front portion was zoned A-1, A1, sorry. And the uses of Miller's Farm and the previous uses that were there, again, if we want to get into a talk, happy to do that offline with the applicants in that. But Miller's Farm and Market and R&S Snow Service, when they started in 1991, were not in compliance with the zoning bylaw. And that's why they came forward in 2003 and submitted that site-specific zoning amendment and went through a very similar process to what we have today. It becomes a little messier because, of course, in 2008, when the Garden Center opened, is when our new comprehensive zoning bylaw for the city of Ottawa came into effect, our most recent one. And a lot of the home-based business provisions changed. Now, I think we need to focus on, and especially when it comes to when we're talking about home-based businesses versus on-farm diversified uses, I just want to emphasize you only have legal non-conforming rights if your land use was legally compliant with the zoning bylaw at the time of its inception. That is what is in conflict. And again, if the applicant wishes to demonstrate legal non-conforming rights, or if they want to expand permissions, there is a process in the Planning Act that outlines that, and that's at the Committee of Adjustment through section 45(2), I believe. But that is all to say that staff disagree that that the current uses are in compliance with the zoning bylaw. And I mean, the fact that they're here today instead at the Committee of Adjustment, I think speaks to that, but I don't know, Adam, if you want to. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there's any further questions from committee members. If not, I'll say my piece.
Vice
I
Chair.
guess.
Vice Chair has one, and if you have more, Counselor, we can come back.
So I just want to confirm what you just said. So when these operations that are being discussed, some of the snow operations, these, when they started in the early 90s, they were not compliant with the zoning at that time?
That's correct. The A1 zone did not permit rural home-based businesses in the Township of Rideau zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
They did become compliant in 2003. The craft shop, which is Miller's Farm and Market, that 115 square meters. It's not in the exception today because obviously we brought in provisions in 2008 for home-based businesses in the rural area that are different from our other provisions. The original rezoning in 2003 actually specifically permitted RNS snow service as a home-based business. That was kind of the aim. Miller's Trucking and Excavation started in 2012.
So I guess I'm still a little fuzzy on the role of the on-farm diversified use program versus the argument that's being made that they have non-conforming rights. What, in your opinion, what is being used to justify the current operations? Is it the on-farm diversified use program?
Well, I think and I'm sorry if this hasn't been clear. So in their initial application, they sought to remove that 150 square meters limit on the craft shop and the provision for not being allowed to permit items not produced on the premises, because the current provisions that we brought in 2021 for on-farm diversified uses are actually more permissive. And that's a good thing. We've recognized in planning policy over time that on-farm diversified uses can be a good thing. When we flagged to the applicant, when we saw their concept plan in that first submission, we said, hey, if you're going to include these, like if we're looking at this holistically, we know you're only interested in the home-based business provisions. We think that you actually have an issue with section 79 and 78, which is the agricultural related use and the on-farm diversified provisions. So in addition to them being in nonconformity with the home-based business provisions for outdoor storage and the heavy vehicles, there is a limit on how many agricultural related uses and on-farm diversified uses you can have on one farm lot. They say that, I mean, our presentation we just saw, they said it's 1.6% in land area. I would be curious to kind of see those numbers, just because again, even when they answered Councillor Kitt's question, like, okay, is it 5,000 square meters or are we talking about 3,000? I want to emphasize that they haven't offered to change anything about the operations on the property. Those landscaping materials will still be there. We're just not counting them in as outdoor storage, which I think will be problematic for the property owners in the long run. And don't get us wrong, like we want to find a way to make this work. It's just there's so much, and the provincial guidelines really don't give us a way out for Miller's Trucking and Excavation. Miller's Farm and Market, we think also have zoning issues, but we would be prepared to work with the Millers to figure that out and ensure that there's no disruption to what they're doing there, if that makes sense. That's kind of why I'm emphasizing the on-farm diversified uses part of this.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Kitts.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for staff, but I do have a couple comments. So I'll just share those now. I think all of us at this table are committed to supporting agricultural businesses. I appreciate that in the rural area, businesses evolve over time. And I wish I could ask the applicant why they haven't pursued legal non-conforming rights through the proper channels or the Committee of Adjustment. But I appreciate that often in the rural area, it's a little bit of ask for forgiveness, not permission. And in part because of our own red tape and our own clunky processes that, again, I think we are trying to improve upon. And if the applicant was in front of us today, asking for a minor exemption, I think I would be sympathetic. But the maximum size limit is 115 square meters. And what the applicant is seeking is 3,165 square meters by their math, or 5,255 square meters by staff's. 3 heavy vehicles are permitted. The applicant is seeking 51. So, I have had examples in my ward of farm-based businesses that have needed to come into compliance. So I'm worried about fairness and precedence on this one. But I do want to say that doesn't take away from the community contributions of the Miller family. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luloff. Oh, Councillor Skalski has a question, so we'll go to her first and then you.
So I just have a question. If this minor zoning amendment does go through today, what would staff recommend as next steps procedurally here?
Mr. Chair, I think one thing that staff would be interested in, and Mr. Miller referenced it, and so did Mr. Chown, about willing to work with us so that if the zoning were to be approved at council, we think perhaps a holding provision requiring them to go through site plan control so that we can work with them to minimize any impacts would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Councillor Luloff.
Thank you, Chair. Like I said earlier, this is a really tough one. And I completely understand the staff recommendation, and I truly feel for the neighbors that we heard from today. I really do. The noise and the traffic and the disruption, I get it. If I lived across the road, it would probably drive me nuts too. I do feel that the owners should be doing everything that they can to mitigate and reduce that disruptive noise, especially outside of normal working hours. That's just being a good neighbor, and it's part of operating responsibly in a rural community. But let's be clear, this isn't a new operation, and this business has been part of the community for more than 30 years. And it's grown steadily, yes, but it also provides good jobs, supports families, and helps keep a local farm sustainable through challenging times. We just held a rural summit, and we heard loud and clear from residents and farmers that they want to create real sustainability for their operations. They told us that they need flexibility, that sometimes the rules are just too rigid. And if we want farms to survive, that we have to give them the space to innovate and diversify. And that's what this farmer is trying to do. And I do agree with staff and my colleagues. This is a much larger operation than what's normally permitted. 51 vehicles is not just a small jump from 3, as Councillor Kitts has said. But we have to ask ourselves, do we really want to stifle the growth of rural businesses that are employing people and contributing to the community? This is a farmer at heart, somebody who works the land, employs local people, and gives back generously to his neighbors. His side business isn't replacing his farm, it's what it's allowing him to keep farming in the first place. And let's be honest, we're not talking about paving over prime agricultural land to build homes here. We're talking about an area being used to park equipment. The likelihood that it ever returns to fertile, productive farmland is virtually zero at this point. If we say no to this today, we're not really protecting farmland. We're putting dozens of parents out of work right before the winter and Christmas season. And that doesn't really sit right with me. Not when this business has been here for decades, serving a community and keeping people employed. I understand that this is going to create challenges for us moving forward, and that there are other similar operations that we'll need to look at as a city. But we can't be so rigid that we lose sight of the people that are behind these applications, the families, the workers, the entrepreneurs who make the rural communities thrive. If this passes today, everything that can be done must be done to reduce the impact on the neighbors. They deserve to live peacefully on the land that they've owned since 1982, when I was a twinkle in my mother's eye. That is only fair. And I want to be clear. This still needs to pass council if it passes today, and that's going to be difficult, frankly. This is not carte blanche. The Millers need to work closely with staff and find every possible way to reduce disruption and maintain good relations with their neighbors. Please do everything possible to make their lives peaceful, as would be expected in a quiet rural community. I also fully feel for the concerns of my colleagues who are rightly thinking about the precedent this could set. This is not an easy decision. It's one that requires balance, compassion, and recognition of the reality of our rural residents, what they face every day. So while I recognize the complexities, I will support this application because I believe this farmers and others like him represent exactly the kind of innovation and resilience that we need to see more of in rural Ottawa, but it must not come at the cost of the sanity of these adjacent neighbors. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Skalsky, I believe you have an amending motion if you want to read that in.
I do. Thank you, Chair. So therefore be it resolved that recommendation 1 be replaced as follows, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008 250 for 6158 Rideau Valley Drive, and further that pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act subsection 3417, no further notice be given.
Thank you. Are there any questions or staff have a comment? No. All right, then what I'll ask that we do is we vote on the amendment or the amending motion. If that fails, we'll vote on the motion that was put forward by staff. So I'll ask the committee coordinator to call the vote.
Councillor Kitts?
No.
Councillor Luloff?
Yes.
Councillor Skalsky?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
No.
And Chair Brown?
Yes.
3 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you. And so is this, there's no clapping in the gallery, please. Is this item carried as amended?
Carried as amended.
Dissent.
We're recording 2 dissents from Councillor Kitts and the Vice Chair. Thank you very much. There are no in-camera items. Item 6.1, update on the agricultural exemption program. Unless colleagues have any questions about that, we did receive it at the Environment Committee. I'm not seeing any questions. We have no speakers that have been registered for a committee's open mic session. Are there any notices of motions? Seeing none, are there any inquiries? Seeing none?
No.
Any other business? Seeing none. So we will adjourn the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, but we do have quarter revision immediately following this. I will say that on December 1st, we have a special meeting of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. We have the budget meeting on December 4th, and then we have a special joint meeting with the Planning and Housing Committee on December 17th. So December will be a busy month for this committee. So thank you very much for all who have come for the main meeting today. We are adjourned. I'm going to give us 5 minutes to get set up for the quarter revision. Thank you.
Chair, we're going to stay on this channel for the quarter revision.
We are, for your ease, Councillor.
You're just so wonderful and accommodating. Thank you, Chair.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's about 11:55, so we'll get started with the Court of Revision. It's item 12.1 listed on our agenda, engineer's report for the McKinnon's Creek Municipal Drain Court of Revision. The recommendation is that the members of the Court of Revision receive the report of the engineer appointed under the Drainage Act entitled Engineer's Report for the McKinnon's Creek Municipal Drain dated May 2025. Two, convene for the first sitting of the Court of Revision under subsection 46(3) of the Drainage Act for the purposes of hearing appeals under section 52 of the Drainage Act from owners of lands that have been assessed for the drainage works in the report entitled Engineer's Report for the McKinnon's Creek Municipal Drain dated May 2025. The Court of Revision is now open for the purposes of hearing appeals under section 52 of the Drainage Act by owners of land assessed for drainage works under the engineer's report for McKinnon's Creek Municipal Drain dated May 2025. This court will now convene for the first sitting of the Court of Revision under section 46 of the Drainage Act. Mr. Dave Ryan is here from city staff. There is no presentation. The following appeals have been received by the clerk: Irene Meager and Lauren Franklin. If there are any other owners of lands assessed under the engineer's report who has not yet provided written notice of appeal to the clerk in advance of this hearing, they should identify themselves to the clerk's assistant at this time with a request to be heard. I'm not seeing anyone in the room, but I just want to confirm if there's anyone online. Not seeing any. Each appellant has 5 minutes to provide information supporting their appeal. We'll start with Lauren Franklin. So Lauren, the floor is yours.
And this would be for the engineer's appeal? Okay. Yeah, this appeal is just a clerical correction of the date that went on to the form for the calculation of injuring liability. In the report, it says 2019. The data used was actually 2022. The valuation used was the 2022 valuation. Therefore, making this clerical correction does not change the injuring liability calculation or the funding that goes to the injured parties. However, we do recommend that the number be changed to correct the form for appending to the report, and that can be done through a direction by this court.
Okay, thank you. Short and sweet. Are there any questions for Mr. Franklin? I'm seeing none. I do just want to try to give a minute just in case Mrs. Meager or her representative come. Tracy Harris, you've been promoted, so you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Can you just identify who you are, please?
My name is Dan Maher. I'm the son of Irene Maher, so I'll be representing her today.
Perfect, thank you. We were concerned you weren't here yet, so
I've been on I've watched your whole show today, so I've been on. I don't know how how I got unmuted there, but yeah. So I'm okay to proceed.
Yes, sir. You have 5 minutes to address the court.
Okay. So I'm here on behalf of my mom, Irene, that's been living, that's lived there for 40 years plus, and we've never had any drainage issues whatsoever. And I know, the development is coming and we have to widen this, widen it all. But it's just concerning, to Irene is that, she has to, pay for any maintenance that comes in the future. But there is no benefit to the existing landowner, to Irene, to my mom, uh, for this. This is all benefiting the developers and the people that are going to buy these houses in the development. We're extending this, building this new creek for them. So wouldn't it, to me, it sounds like they should be the ones in taking care of this. So today, what I'm asking is to be exempt from the maintenance, because I worry about, and I'm not an expert in this, but I worry about, like, in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, someone says, "Hey, we have to reclean the whole creek, and it's $2 million, and she has to pay, you know." All kinds of money that she may not have. She is, won't say exactly her age, but she's in her 70s and retired and on a fixed income. I just worry about the future for her, that she may not be able to afford that. Is there a cap that, we've got an example from the city saying, if there was a beaver dam, it would be, if it cost 50,000, our part would be 90, which I'm okay, but where's the cap on that? I mean, what if it was 12,000? That could be a lot of money for a woman her age on a fixed income with no benefit to this drain, because we do not have any drain issues.
No, thank you very much. And I know, speaking broadly about the Drainage Act, any property within a watershed helps support that ongoing maintenance whenever it may occur. I would anticipate that there wouldn't be any maintenance for at least the next few decades, depending on when the work commences, if the work commences on this project. Do you have any evidence? I'm trying to provide you with every opportunity, as you represent your mom, to provide evidence as to why the property shouldn't be assessed any cost going forward if the maintenance needs to be undertaken in the next 2 decades.
Again, like, as I said, there is no benefit to my mom widening this creek. The benefit is for the development of the 3 home builders that want to build houses. We've been there for 40 years. There's been no flooding whatsoever on this property. But because of the new development, and I totally understand the city's changing, but because of that, I mean, it changes, the changes, like, probably, I guess, will flood our property. So yes, we have to do something, but why, it just kind of bothers, I guess, her that, and scares her that there's, like, we don't know it's, what the cost is going to be in the future, or in 10 years, like you said, or in 5 years. I'm not sure how long they last, like you said, like hopefully a decade. But, in a decade from now, like, I just worry that, she may not be able to afford whatever the expense is.
No, thank you very much. And what I can confirm is that the upfront cost to do the work, as it's outlined in the engineer's report, that's being paid for completely by the applicant themselves. So there won't be any costs on your mom today. But I believe Councillor Kitts might have a question to staff.
Yeah, I was just hoping if you could speak to future maintenance a little bit and, the process.
So our obligations through you, Mr. Chair, are under the Drainage Act. We do have to maintain these drainage works, and they are private communal systems, and all the landowners that benefit do get assessed some costs from the point at which we do maintenance upstream. This property is currently assessed in the Richard Clark drain and has been for many, many years. So it's possible that this landowners already received an assessment of some sort at some point for maintenance on the drain. It's the engineer's determination that the land does benefit from the drain, That's why they're assessed some cost for future maintenance. Typically, future maintenance is always spot maintenance for the most part. We rarely do a full bottom clean out, as the chair has suggested, maybe 15, 20, 30 years. It really depends on the soil conditions and so on. So it's usually, excuse me, like a spot maintenance type affair where the costs are somewhat quite minimal. Actually, it's usually beaver dams, that type of thing. Blockages, they get assessed to everyone in the entire watershed. So I don't expect that the future maintenance assessments would be that high necessarily.
And can you explain a little bit what you mean by benefit? Because the delegate's point is that, they're not asking for this drain to be made larger. That's, to benefit the developer. So can you explain what you mean by benefit in this context?
Yeah, I might let the engineer respond to that if that's okay.
So there was a prepared response submitted by us, and I believe it does include the definition of benefit under the Drainage Act, but benefit itself, specifically as per the definition of the Drainage Act, involves like improvements to land, the ability to construct, the ability to typically on a farm drain, the ability to tile, the ability for improved drainage, the ability for development, anything like that would fall under the definition of benefit. That has a very specific meaning. However, I believe they're also including the idea of outlet. So outlet is anybody that contributes water. So if you contribute water, you are assessed under the Drainage Act. There's no way around that.
Okay. And there's not really, to your point, there's no way around that. There's no way for us to exempt property that's contributing.
I mean, you could, everything is within your purview. You could change a factor so that the assessment comes out to zero. However, I don't think that would be fair to any other landowner. They are currently, as Dave mentioned, assessed into the Richard Clark drain, which is incorporated here. So since the 1950s or 60s, when that drain was constructed, they've always been assessed. They've always paid for maintenance. That piece of the drain is being incorporated in here. They have the same use. So they're continuing to pay for the improvements that are required downstream, or the maintenance of those improvements that are required downstream. Not just the construction that's being directly assigned to them. So like their assessments under the Drainage Act for the Richard Clark would continue on into the future as they are now. So.
And if we were to reduce the assessment as zero, it would have to be increased to other landowners on the Richard Clark.
That's correct. All costs are fixed. So if you take money away from one property, it has to go somewhere onto one assessment. That can be onto a roads assessment, or if there's no specific direction, then it gets redistributed through the entirety of the schedule, and all other landowners end up paying more.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions to the delegate or staff? Councillor Skalski?
Yeah, I have a question. What are, in real dollars, what are the kind of costs that one can anticipate if they're, maybe that's a very difficult question to answer, but can you give me a range of what that could look like for a resident who's on a fixed income, may not anticipate these kinds of costs?
Sure, Mr. Chair, for future maintenance, it really depends. It's usually a few $100s, maybe on average. But again, it's very hard to say. It depends on the size of your property, how close you are to the drain, the land use for your property. There's a number of factors that go into the assessment schedules. So it's really hard to say. But for a smaller property, it's usually in the hundreds of dollars or less, I would say. And it doesn't happen that often. Again, spot maintenance, we can hold costs of up to $5,000 for up to 5 years. And so oftentimes they may not even see an assessment for smaller maintenance projects.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify when Dave said that we can hold those costs for up to 5 years, it's so we don't send out small assessments to landowners in the watershed. It's so when there's enough built up, that's when it's distributed, and that's a cost that the municipality carries, just as an administrative burden for us, but easier on the landowners in the watersheds. So are there any other questions to staff or the delegates? Seeing none, we're going to recess for a few minutes so we can deliberate on the 2 delegations we received, and then we'll come back and render the decision. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much for everyone's patience. I'm going to ask Mr. Ryan to provide some information that he worked out during our recess.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we spoke with the engineer and we came up with a calculation that if we were to do $50,000 worth of maintenance, future maintenance, that this property would be assessed $90.
Thank you very much. And that's good context to have. The decision of the Court of Revision with respect to the McKinnon's Creek municipal drain is as follows. The appeal filed by Mr. Franklin is accepted. The appeal filed by Mrs. Maher is denied. This court adopts the assessments in the engineer's report dated May 2025. The decision rendered by this court may be appealed to the Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Appeal Tribunal within 21 days of today, November 6th, 2025. Sample appeal notices are available from the city's municipal drainage unit. Landowners can call 613-580-2424, extension 25008. Thank you very much, everyone. Court is adjourned.